Welcome to Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Shipp, and I'm excited to be sharing with you my life with a son on the spectrum. This podcast is for anyone who is looking for quick tips and perspective, but most of all, for hope and inspiration. So sit back, relax, and let's put the pieces together. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Shipp. Thank you so much for joining us today. Last week, we had the great honor of speaking with Gail Yule. If you didn't get a chance to check out that episode, please do. She had some wonderful insights about education within the special needs community, and I am so proud of their accomplishments and what they're achieving there. So if you didn't get a chance to check out that episode, please do. This week, I'm especially excited to have Michelle Choairy on the show today. Michelle is a dedicated founder of Collective Wisdom for Complex Kids, an organization committed to empowering families navigating the challenges of raising complex children. Inspired by her personal experience as a mother to her son, Drake, who also has a rare genetic disorder called TBR1, Michelle understands firsthand the struggles and triumphs that comes with parenting a child with unique needs. With a passion for helping families move from confusion to clarity, Michelle specializes in guiding parents to reevaluate and prioritize their family dynamics. Her work emphasizes understanding children's needs, advocating effectively, and building positive, supportive environments that foster growth for the whole family. Grounded in compassion and real-life experience, Michelle continues to inspire others to approach life with strength and purpose. Her mantra, "Live Your Best Life," reflects her mission to empower others to celebrate small wins, overcome obstacles, and find joy in the everyday moments of parenting. Please welcome Michelle to the show today. Thank you so much for being here, Michelle.
Oh, hi, Nikki. Oh, thank you for having me. I love this. I love the colors. You look great. This is so good.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I put on my big girl clothes today.
Every once in a while we should do that.
I know, right? I'm like, oh, I look like an actual adult. That's amazing. Instead of like, mom mode with the messy bun and the workout clothes and running around all day. So
exactly.
I'm really excited to have you on the show today. And for our listeners that are tuning in, I loved our conversation that we had when we first met, and I knew that I wanted to have you on the show. And I just, kind of wanted to open up by you telling our listeners a little bit about your personal story and what inspired you to create Collective Wisdom for Complex Kids.
Yeah, so, these conversations always start with your kid, right? When you get pregnant and you give birth. So,
yes.
No, my son, so when he was little, when he was a baby, I knew that there was just something that wasn't right. And, usually moms kind of feel things. You have that mama gut, that kind of tells you something is going on.
Oh,
so at about 18 months was when I started kind of searching for something, like he's not eating well, like something is going on with sensory wise, maybe on his mouth. I wasn't sure. And then, things just kind of snowballed after that.
Right.
So he didn't say his first word until he was 3. And he couldn't even say mom, like mama. It was grunting noises that we got. And so when we found that, we knew that we needed to get help for sure. So we actually traveled across country to get him the help that he needed. And then we came back and we thought that we had it figured out. But it wasn't just that. There were other things that started. And we finally, after all these years, when he was 8 years old, we got the insurance to agree to pay for a genetic test. And I was expecting it to come back negative, right? Because everything else that we had done was negative, but we had all these things that were happening. He had apraxia, he had ADHD, he had, OCD, and the list is long, right. But we couldn't figure out what was the cause. And
the core of it,
Yeah. And it showed TBR1. And I was like, what is that? My doctor didn't even know what that
Wow.
was. So we had to go searching for it. He was at the time number 42 in the world with that
Oh my
genetic disorder.
gosh.
That was about, I want to say 3 years ago. And now we have about 215 kids in the
Okay.
world with this. So now that they're able to check and they're able to test for this disorder, it's starting to show up a little bit more. And it was then that I, going through all of this stuff that we go through as a mother of a special needs child, I
Yes.
said, I need to put this into something that I can teach the moms that are just starting this process
Mm-hmm.
how to not lose their minds while they're doing it, because
Yep.
I did. I lost
Yep.
my mind. So that's how Collective Wisdom for Complex Kids came up. So
That's so awesome. That's amazing. And I love that how you've been able to take that and make something out of this, right? Like I feel that way about my podcast. Like I know I wanted to help parents find resources to become curious, to start empowering themselves to ask questions, find the things that they need for their kids. And I think that that's become a huge blessing for you. I mean, even though you've had your challenges, I think being able to give back in that way, I would assume is probably really rewarding for you.
it's it helped me help
Yes.
others.
Yes.
I I remember my mom used to always say, to get out of depression, to get out of a hole, you need
Mm-hmm.
to go and you need to help others. And
Yes.
so, and that's kind of what I ended up doing. And I am loving this. This is my side gig. I have a full-time job. This is just
Yes.
like, I'm doing this on the side,
Yeah.
but this is bringing me so much more joy.
Yeah.
And I see things with a different lens now
Oh, of course.
because
Yeah.
I'm helping the
Yeah.
other parents. So
Absolutely. And this genetic disorder kind of exhibits, and we talked about this, this exhibits a lot of autistic traits. Like when we had our call together previously, it sounds very similar because some of the stuff that you were describing to me, I'm like, that's exactly Drayson.
yes. So the genetic disorder has a spectrum, and
Okay.
there are on the severe side, there are kiddos who can't walk, they can't eat, they can't feed themselves. So you have that on the very severe spectrum of
Okay.
TBR1. And then you have on the lighter spectrum, you have the kiddos that are kind of like Drake, and if you look at them, they
Right.
don't have a disorder.
Yeah.
But then you start interacting with them, and then, he has a speech disorder. He has ADHD jumping from everywhere, and also some autistic traits that come
Mm-hmm.
along with that. For example, he obsesses over certain things. So this week was somebody gave him an elf on the shelf at school, and
Uh-huh.
now everything in the house is Christmas. And so, the obsession
Yes.
over an elf on the shelf. I want
Yeah.
to dress my elf. I want to take my elf to do this. And so those traits, they come in.
Yeah.
And the hard thing, Nikki, was that when he was younger,
Mm-hmm.
everybody wanted to categorize him as autistic. But we would do the tests and he would not fit all the boxes for
All the
that.
boxes. Yeah.
He didn't check those boxes. And
Mm-hmm.
so I pursued this because I'm like, it can be. And
Mm-hmm.
he has those traits, but there's something else going on here. And had I not fought for it, Nikki, we wouldn't have
Yeah.
found out.
Right. Well, and it's a lot like, autism, there's a lot of secondary diagnoses. So that's kind of what you're dealing with too, which is why I think you're able to help not just this rare genetic disorder, but so many other neurodivergent categories, because really it sounds like it kind of falls into something similar. Not the same,
Yeah.
but but it's still falling kind of within that. And so I think that you're still able to help so many other people then besides just this genetic disorder, because you said there's only 200. Did you say there's only about a couple hundred people in the world?
I think 219,
oh my gosh.
215 in the world. And Drake is actually the only one with his variant. So there is no other kiddo that has his variant. I know, isn't it crazy? There are some that are a little bit more on the severe side, and they have the same variants. So I don't know if we just haven't found all of them because they're just being categorized as autism. And so people are not actually doing these genetic testings that will show what really is the core issue here, you know? And so, they're in the reason for complex kids is that it doesn't have you don't have to have a name for what it is that your child is. If you have a complex kid, you know that you have a complex kid. Right. And it could be an ADHD, he has ADHD, or it could be TBR1, or it could be autism. Or it could be whatever. You still need the same support system and the supports that to survive. To be able to be. I always say it takes a village, right? Like I had to find my tribe, my circle of people that, even now we're having transitions with providers, and to vet providers and to find the right providers that fit our family and that are good for Drayson. I mean, it's overwhelming. And so what you're describing is, I think, very blanketed for a lot of parents that are dealing with complex kids, like you said. And so, which kind of leads me into my next question, what advice would you give to parents who are unsure about seeking maybe professional help for their child's behavior or developmental delays? Because I always have conversations with parents about this, but, what advice would you have for those parents? Early intervention is the best thing that you can do for your child and 100%. For yourself too. Yeah. But early intervention, like I remember so many people would come to me and just say, "Oh, he's going to outgrow it. Everything's going to be okay." So and so didn't speak until they were 10, you know, or whatever. Like those are the things that you kind of, gets thrown to you. But then if you don't start early, then it snowballs and it gets worse when they're older, and it's harder for them to learn what they need to learn. So early intervention, that's my answer.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I talk to a lot of parents about that too. And I was just talking to a mother the other day, and her son's much older, and, he's 12, 13 years old now. Drayson's 13. So they're around the same age. And, I can definitely see the difference compared to what we've tried to put in place for Drayson. And she's just now getting around to trying to find services for him. And she's having a really hard time. And it's heartbreaking because you don't want to tell her, I didn't want to tell her like, well, it's how I was trying to put it delicately to her. I didn't want to be like, well, you should have done it earlier, because that's not what I'm trying to say. But I could see the struggle, you know what I mean? And I felt my heart broke for her, because I don't think that she did anything intentionally. I just think she didn't know the difference. She didn't know any better. And now here she is, and it's like her child is now having more problems. So now those problems are becoming amplified because she didn't have those things in place. And so it's almost like triple fold of what she's having to deal with versus if she helped him out when he was 4 or 5. And
for sure,
to no fault of her own, but it was like, I was trying to put it in a way where I didn't come off saying something like that, where it sounded like, oh, well, why didn't you do it earlier? Because I didn't want to insult her. But my heart really felt for her, because I realized in that conversation that she really, truly just didn't really think about it or know the difference, because it was manageable when they were younger. You don't think that it's going to be hard. And it's not that bad. And you almost like trick yourself into the mindset of, oh, maybe it's not that bad. I don't have to worry about it. Or maybe maybe, my friend's right. They'll outgrow it. And then they realize that that's not what's happening, So
I always like to say to moms, we have that mama gut feeling,
yeah.
right? We do.
Mm-hmm.
And people sometimes like to put that off to the side. Don't
Yes.
let them do that.
Yeah.
Follow your gut.
Yeah.
Follow that feeling that you have, because even if it's nothing,
Yeah.
at least you are looking and searching and trying to make sure that it's nothing.
Right. Yeah, and you're right. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned as a mom is, and turning back retrospectively to me, is trusting my intuition.
Yes.
I think, when we grow up, we kind of enter self-doubt, we enter a lot of questioning, or we overthink things. And I've really had to learn over the years to pull out my intuition and realize that I've ignored intuition on several accounts. Like, oh my gosh, like how did I miss that? But,
Yeah.
but I think really tapping into that intuition is such a big thing. So 100%, I think you're right in that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What strategies have you found effective for connecting with children who struggle with communication? I think you do have, now do you have a 5-step process? Is that correct?
Yes. So to what I'm teaching is called Thrive.
Okay.
It's a great name that I found. I put it together, and I pat myself in the back. I'm like, oh. But this is really so you can build a village, and
Mm-hmm.
it goes through 6 steps. The first one is you get a team in
Mm-hmm.
place for your child. A team, a medical team, teachers, anything that's outside of you and your family too, but we'll talk about family in a bit. But a teamwork.
Yeah.
If you don't do this, if you don't get the correct medical medical people around you, it's not
Mm-hmm.
it just doesn't work, because you're
Right.
going to be pushed in a bunch of different directions, and you need to connect, and you need to make
Yep.
sure that they know who your child is and who they are and what they need, right?
Right.
The next one is the H, which is the help systems, and this is where you kind of get into IEPs, like how do you deal with school
Mm.
districts? How do you deal with state funded programs, which
Yes.
you will need to deal with?
Yeah.
And how do you deal with insurance companies? Oh, they
Yeah.
are a disaster. Anyway, that's the
It's super fun.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you come with the R, which is the relationships. And this is kind of what we were talking about. It's the family, it's your
Yeah.
village, it's the people that are around you and your child, and how you develop those relationships and really bring them into your child's life,
Yeah.
because they sometimes cannot enter their lives. So you have to
Mm-hmm.
bring them into your kid's life. Then you have the I, which is very important to all the moms that are listening. It's the integration. It's when you take care of yourself. If you don't take care of yourself, if you're not well,
Yeah.
your child's not going to be well. Trust me on that. And then
Yeah.
the V is
So true.
validation, and this is my favorite, which is celebration. You celebrate small little wins.
Yes.
Every time they said "ma," yay! They
Yes.
said "ma."
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Celebrate that. And then the E is really expect the miracle to come.
Yeah.
And because if you do all these things for them,
Right.
you will experience that miracle,
Yeah. And
which is
I think going through that too, you don't realize that you do have, I call the V in your system, I call them my moments of belief, is what I call
yes,
them, because it's like, yes, okay. And you realize like each time something like that happens, I realize like Drayson is capable. Like, oh, okay.
yeah,
And you kind of, I think in general as parents, sometimes we underestimate our kids, right? But then when I see him actually thriving and doing those things, then I'm like, oh, okay, there it is. Like, here's my reminder. And it is, I mean, we celebrate the smallest things in our household compared to what other people are, maybe not recognizing or celebrating.
yeah.
And it's a big deal for us in our family, because it means something to see him making those strides. And so I love that you also incorporated the self-care. I love that you did that, because I really tell people I am no good to Drayson if I am not taking care of myself. I'm no good to anybody. I'm not good to my friends, my family, my like everybody. Like I'm just not going to be that quality of human being that I need to be or want to be for my surroundings, for my people, for my,
Yeah.
and I feel that way for Drayson. It's how you show up, I think sometimes too. And I'm sure your son is very intuitive. Mine is. And I know that if I walk into a room and I'm not, and I maybe am having a bad day or I'm in my feelings about having to go through an appeal for his care with his caregivers, or like you said, dealing with insurance, because that's always fun. I could do so many episodes alone on just the debacle that we've had to go through with insurance. like I could probably do a whole series of insurance stuff on that. But you know what I mean? But I love that you say that, because Drayson picks up on that from me. Like he feels that stress, and sometimes I don't think that people realize that our kids pick up what we're feeling, whether we say it or not.
Yes.
So I love that you have this process in place.
Yeah. So one of the things about our kiddos is that I think because of their quote unquote disability, they have this on the other side, they have this ability to connect, to feel people in different ways. Like my son can pick up on exactly what I'm feeling that day and that time, and he will start crying with me sometimes because he feels you. So it's very important to take care of yourself. It matters.
Yeah.
It matters.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I think that's such a big message that you bring to parents, because we all do it. We forget. I'll take care of it later because, I need to do this, this, and this. Everything else becomes a priority. And I always tell people that you don't realize sometimes when you have kids that you feel like you lose a little bit of your identity at first.
For sure.
I had to really reinstate that for myself. You know what I mean? Like I am a person besides just being a mom, and I really had to work on reinstating that for myself, Advocating for a child's needs can obviously feel overwhelming, kind of what we were talking about right now. But, what are the first steps parents can take to advocate effectively in schools and in healthcare settings? Do you have any maybe quick tips on that?
Yes. So the very first thing that anybody that is entering this process at all is to make sure that you ask for an assessment through the school district or the state, depending on what age they are. Here in California, if the kids, and I think this is a federal thing, if the kids are below 3 years old, you go through the state. And the state is going to take a look at your child and see what deficits they have and what they need to do. And that is your starting point. Then from there, I will tell you a lot more is going to come. But, and if you're older than 3, then you need to call your school district and you need to say, I need a full assessment for my child because I think that there are some special needs in here. And if they don't do it, they are breaking the law. So that is where I would start with everybody.
Yeah.
And as far as physicians, pediatricians are usually the ones that are going to pick up this kind of, the beginnings of things. But I don't think that they know how to guide the parents the way that they need to guide them when they have these complex kids. So, of course, you still have to rely on your physician because a lot of the referrals go from your physician.
Yes.
But I really think that once you know, and there are things that you need to be doing, like the state, the school district, and also the other thing that I say, and I tell everybody this, if your child has any kind of developmental delay or any kind of issues that you see, I would immediately put your name down with a developmental pediatrician.
Yep, 100%.
They know how to help you. Pediatricians alone, most of them don't. So
Yeah.
Yes.
And you bring and that's you bring up such great points, and that's kind of exactly what we did with Drayson. We were lucky; we had a very proactive pediatrician, and she referred us to a developmental pediatrician. And I tell everybody, get to a developmental pediatrician, because it means it is there is a big difference. There's a difference because they know exactly what to do. Our Drayson's pediatrician is fantastic, and I love her for being so proactive and getting us the right referral. And I'm forever grateful for her for that. And same thing with the school district. You're absolutely correct. Here in Arizona, same thing. If the child's older than 3 years old and they're in school, and we went through something very similar with Drayson. We had to request an independent evaluation because they wouldn't evaluate him on my concerns that I had for him. And he was in, I think, first or second grade at the time. I think he was in second grade. And he was, I had suspicion that he had dyslexia. And they said, no, he reads fine. And I said, but the comprehension piece isn't coming into place. And when I kept asking for the data, they couldn't supply it. And I was like, something is not adding up here. This doesn't making any sense. So they would not evaluate him because they said it was within a 2-year time frame. And when we hit the 2-year time frame, they still wouldn't evaluate him. It had passed the 2-year mark. So here in the state of Arizona, you can request the school to evaluate him every 2 years from the point of first evaluation. That's how I understood it. So I requested an independent evaluation outside of the school, and sure enough, it came back. He had dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia. And so I love that you're telling people that, because I tell parents a lot of the same thing too. If they are not evaluating your child, then you write to district and you request an independent evaluation, because then they have to do it.
Exactly. Somehow just one quick point there is that really, if they're not giving you an assessment, when you ask them for an assessment, they are breaking the law.
Yes, I know.
So IDEA states that they need to make these assessments. And so don't be shy. This is where, you really need to step in, and this is how you help your child, is by being an advocate. And you're going to learn how to become an advocate through the years.
Oh yeah, I tell them, learn about IDEA, learn about FAPE, learn about all of those rights that you have within disabilities to understand how you can then communicate that to his school system, because his or her school system, I should say, and that's something that I've talked to parents all over the country, all in the East Coast. I mean, I had a call from somebody in Pennsylvania the other day, and I'm not familiar with their state system, but I know that these are the things they can look up federally, at least to get them started. And so I think that you bring up such valid points, and it is hard to be proactive, especially when you're already dealing with a diagnosis, you're dealing with outside care, you're dealing with all these things, and I realize that it puts people in a state of overwhelm, right? And we kind of enter that fear of, I enter into not in just a state of fear sometimes, but guilt. And I know that we've talked about that as well too. So many parents struggle with guilt or feelings of being a bad mom or a bad dad. How do you help them overcome that mindset? Because I know I've had lots of conversations just on the mindset alone. So do you have any suggestions on how parents can overcome that mindset?
Yes. So first of all, just put this out there. You are your child's best advocate.
Yes.
You are your child's hero. There is nobody out there that knows their child more than you do.
Right.
So just by that, you got to remember that you are doing the right things. So if you are doing the work, you're doing the right thing. And so knowing that you are doing what you can for your child changes that mindset of, okay, I am enough. I am doing what's right for my child. And of course you have to get that integration in there too, that self-care too. But, knowing that and learning how to do this will get you to that change of the overwhelm, the not knowing, the unknown, the the guilt, and all of that. Like,
Yeah.
you have to learn
Yeah.
what you need to do, and then you have to trust it.
Right.
And that is, I think that's the basic part of not being overwhelmed, not allowing yourself to
Yeah.
become overwhelmed.
And it's a huge leap of faith. I always tell
It
people, like, people are like, oh, you're so confident. And I'm like, well, I'm glad I look like I'm confident because I'm not always confident. Like I walk into
is.
sometimes
No.
these meetings with Drayson's caregivers and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to
Yeah.
fake it till I make
Exactly.
it. Like it's like, you don't know. It's hard because what you don't know, you don't know. And so you want
But
to
you
be
know
guided
that.
in the right direction, but you also have to trust that what you're doing is the right thing. And so it
Yeah.
is overwhelming,
And
and
that is exactly why people, like, that is where Wisdom for Complex Kids came out. It's like, you, when you enter this world, you don't know what you're
right.
dealing with. And
Yeah.
so learning from someone who has gone through it brings that out
Yes.
of you, and you'll learn in a different way, and not just by hitting,
Right. Yeah.
running
Like,
into a wall every time, or
right. Well, and
you
I
know,
always tell parents, you have to
yeah.
realize there's lots of other parents before you that have done this. So use them, their resources, like talk to them, find out, get the information. Don't be afraid to ask the question. Like, what's it going to hurt to ask the question? And,
Exactly.
and I understand because it's, it was hard for me at first too. Like, you feel scared, you feel nervous, you don't want to let on that maybe you don't know exactly what you're talking about or doing, but all I knew was that Drayson needed my help and I had to help my kid. And I think holding on to that, like you said, Drayson looks up to me. I have to be there for him. I have to be able to do these things for him because he doesn't know the difference.
Of
I
course.
might, I do, he doesn't.
Yes.
And so I think that that's really important that you bring these key points to light. 100%. I think that families can create a more positive and understanding home environment for everyone too. And do you have any quick tips on how families can continue to kind of stay positive? Because it is very daunting. I always tell
It
people it's
is.
not doom and gloom, but it's frustrating and it's daunting. So how can you continue to maybe create more positive and understanding home environments while navigating, with your complex kid?
Yeah. So we we don't have a lot of close family. My husband is from Las Vegas, and they would come down here quite often when they were younger. Not as much anymore because everybody is involved in so many sports, and we just don't have the time to do it. But during that
Right.
time when we were all together, it was a very hard thing for me to explain to them that I couldn't take Drake to a restaurant to go have dinner with everybody,
Yeah.
or that we would take him, but my husband and I had to trade times who's going to eat first because
Right.
somebody needed to be outside walking with him. And so, one of the things that to me was helpful to bring the family in was to actually be vulnerable and talk about what
Yeah.
it is that's going on. Talk about what you are going through.
So before we end the show today, I just want to ask if you could share one piece of advice to parents that are starting this process, and what would it be for them? I know you have this program, and I'm going to list, for those of you listening today, I'm going to list everything in the show notes so you guys know how to get a hold of Michelle, because I love what you're offering. I think it's so much more than just a quote unquote program. I mean, your mentoring and what you're doing to help families is so, so amazing. So if you could just share one piece of advice to parents getting started in this process, what would it be?
Follow your instincts.
Yeah.
Believe, trust that mama gut, that daddy gut that you have. Trust those instincts, and follow through with them,
Yes.
because early intervention is the best thing that you can do for your child. And if you don't follow your instincts, that is not going to be happening. And so follow your instincts is what I am. And one more thing, you are your child's hero. So you are the one that is going to help them grow and become the best person that they can be. And so just remember to take care of yourself, love yourself, and do the work, and the miracle will come.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate you on so many levels, and I've loved our conversations. Thank you so much for being on the show today. This concludes our episode for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you have questions, comments, or even a show topic that you'd like to hear from us, please feel free to send me an email at info@piecesformypuzzle.com. I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram if you haven't done so already, and also check out our YouTube channel as well. If you like what you're hearing, please spread the word to others so we can help more in the community, and feel free to give us a good podcast rating on your preferred podcast platform of choice if you haven't done so already as well. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, keep working on your puzzle, and remember, you don't have to have it all solved in a day. Take care.